Once the data is collected, obviously we can then go over to the platform and start data entry. But before I show you that, I'm going to flip over to the platform in just a minute and go through a little bit of a demonstration. But I do want to make sure that everyone knows how to get set up to participate if you've not already. So if you went to the benchmarking website, which you can see there, benchmarking.sacubo.org, the first thing you're going to see is the login section, and at the bottom of that it says if you're a new user, click here. So a little bit of insight here. All that does is it creates an email that goes to that resource at sacubo.org email address, and then just send the request. So I'd like to participate. It can be as simple as that if you want, or you can go ahead and provide the details. So there is an account request form with some information that's required to set up a new institution and new users. So if you choose to, you can go ahead and put all that information into the email. Here's the form with the basic information we need. It's certainly not extensive. We don't want to collect anything more than really we need. So it's just who's your institution, who are you, and what level of access do you need. And you can set up as many users as you want. You can just add one user to begin with and then have an administrator who can add the others as you need. Or each time you need a new user, you can submit a request back to that resource email address, either way. So startup is very simple. We'll set up an account for you and you're ready to go. All right, so I'm going to switch over then to the benchmarking platform, and we'll go through some of this process. All right, so I've already logged in here, so I've gotten past that login screen that I just showed you, and this is the first screen that it starts with. So I'm going to show you some of the features here, and then we'll get into a little bit of detail. So my account is, if you need to manage users at any point, that's how that can be done. So there's a list of the users for my institution, level of access that they have. You can change your own password if you need to. There's you can change your institution's address information and so on. So you can modify as necessary there. And then the support page, I really wanted to make sure that you all are aware of. So there are a number of resources here that can be helpful if you need more information about how anything works. So the data entry icons, you'll see that as I go through this, some of these icons that show up. If you're not clear what something means, the definitions are there. The data collection worksheet I just showed you, that's where you can download that, fill that out in Excel, and then use that for your entry into the platform. The webinar link, don't pay any attention to that right now. The webinars that are included there are from last year. So as soon as we get done with this, we're recording right now, we'll use this webinar to then upload back to the website so we have updated information. There's a quick start guide that is very helpful as a starting point to answer a lot of the how do I do this, how do I do that type of questions. If you're not sure about some of the functional definitions, there's a glossary here that can be helpful. But let me just give you a simple way to think about this. If it's in iPads, it works the same way here. We use the same definitions to make it easy. And then there's some information about how to filter. So we tried to provide all the support and help that's necessary to make sure that questions get answered as they come up. So back to the home page, let me point out some important information here. You see the red exclamation. That means there are some required questions that I haven't answered yet. So I can't get access to any of the report functions until I answer all the required questions. And these are really just demographic information about the institution. It's the ways that we can categorize an institution, which is why it's so important that we have that data. You can see some of these, again, the icon definitions are back in the help screen, as I said. So this one means that there are things here that haven't been answered yet. This green check means all that's done. We're finished with that section right now. So down below that, you can see in institutional details, we've answered 8 out of 22 questions. over here in expenses, we've only answered 1 out of the 50 questions there, and none under total expenses. So the result is we're only 11% complete right now, which means that we won't get access to the data once reporting is open for this year. And if I didn't say it earlier, reporting opens March 1. We hold the current year reporting for a reason. What we don't want is for you to run some peer comparison reports today and come back 2 weeks from now, try to run the same report, and it's drastically different because between now and then, 50 more institutions have added their data. So we do keep the current year reporting locked down until March 1, and then we open it up. All the prior years are available, so you can get to those at any time, but current year is not available until March 1, and it's not available at all until all the required questions are completed and at least 50% of all the questions are answered. And we do that because your data is important to everyone else that's participating. If you've not provided any data, then it really doesn't help the rest of us with comparisons. So we want to make sure that everybody provides enough information that it can be useful in reporting purposes. So you can see in the past what our participation rate has been. Most institutions won't respond to 100% of the questions because some of them don't apply. So there'll be a few questions that are related to privates only that public institutions won't answer. So there is an option to mark those NA so it counts in the percent that you've answered. But just need to get to 50%. So let me show you a little bit of the data entry just so you can see what's here. So these are the details about the institution. It's just who we are, those demographic questions. A couple of new areas that we just added this year. So we have institutional endowment accounting question to let everyone know where your endowment lives. Is it in the institution within your financial statements? Is it in a foundation, but it's blended with your university financial statements, or is it totally separate? And then there's one question about total endowment assets later on. That's new for this year. And then we've also added, sorry, it's not on the screen, it's later on. We've added a question about square footage by function. So those are two new areas that will, very few additional data points, but it's going to add tremendously to the amount of information that we can get out. So those are new. As I think I said earlier, we look every year to see what do we have and what do we not have, ask users what else would be helpful. And so these are some of the things that came out of that process this year to get more reporting around endowment and then facility size. This is an important function on any of these data entry screens. You see this copy prior year data link. So all that does is take whatever you entered last year and move it over, particularly with these institutional details. Obviously, institutions don't change much from year to year, so you can copy all that over and it's done immediately. You don't have to worry about some of these questions. The financial details are some of the high-level questions I showed you on the worksheet. Appropriation and net tuition and fees, auxiliary revenue, and so on. So all of those are at the institution level. Then the My Institution link is where each of these sections is housed. So under expenditures by function, the first page is just to indicate which functions are you going to report on. Not every institution has every function, so we don't have hospitals, we don't have independent operations, we do have auxiliary, we do have scholarships. So other than those, we will report details. So I can either save and next, and that would advance me, or save this, and then there's a link here that goes over the details. So then each of the functions that I just checked, I'll have a screen here where I can enter the same data points. And there are basically 5 for publics and 7 for privates within each function. Number of employees, the gross square feet. Again, we've used standard definitions here. So if you're reporting square footage anywhere else, the same information is what you would report here. That's not a required field, so if you don't collect that information anywhere else and it's not really all that important to you, it's not It's not required. Obviously, it would be useful if you have it and report it, but it's certainly not a required field. Total cost for this function, the compensation and benefits for this function, and then everything else for this function. So there are some important notes that are down here. They typically are in red if it's something we want to make sure you pay attention to. So publics typically report operations and maintenance of plants separately as a separate function. So if you do, be sure you don't also include it here in other costs, because we don't want it to double count that data. And then down here at the bottom, if you're a private institution, there's some notes here about what you need to report, since the accounting is a little bit different. So that's the same information for each one of these functions. Go through the same 5 or 7 questions for each of the functional areas.